Welcome to Learn This Game. We can learn about tabletop games and how they are played. In this presentation, we'll be looking at Lawrence of Arabia, the Arab Revolt from 1917 to 1918. In this video, there'll be a general description and overview of the game. We'll inventory the components, and we'll go through gameplay, including setup, one sample turn, and victory conditions. In the description, there'll be some helpful links. There's also a timestamp index so you can navigate directly to any part of the presentation. If you want to skip this introduction and go straight to the setup and gameplay, you can go to the timestamp index now in the description. And if you find this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. You can also leave a comment to share your experience with this game, or let us know what game you'd like to see reviewed. Your participation really does help the channel continue to grow and provide more content. Lawrence of Arabia was published by Decision Games in 2019 and designed by Joseph Miranda. In this solitaire historical war game, you take the role of T.E. Lawrence, also known as Lawrence of Arabia, to lead the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. The age recommendation is 14 and older. The difficulty level is very low, and each game averages 60 to 90 minutes to play. The game is designed for solo play only. There are no multiplayer rules. An app is not required, and there are no standalone apps. Raiders is a solitaire wargame system in which the player takes command of a small force, called raiders, conducting daring missions behind enemy lines and engaging in fierce combat on far-flung frontiers. The opposition force is controlled by the game system. There are currently 5 games in this series, all of which are historically accurate. There are currently 4 other Learn This Game videos featuring mini-games from this publisher. The links are in the description. Now that you've seen a brief introduction to the game, let's get into the game itself. This is an historical card-driven war game that uses a point-to-point map, counters, cards, and dice. Thematically, this game is based upon the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. The game is designed to be historically accurate. Now let's see how to win the game. The game is played in missions. In this game, there are 4 mission cards. Each game will require you to draw one of these mission cards. Each mission card will state the objective for that mission and how many operation cards you receive per the execution section. The op cards act as a timer for the mission. If you complete the objectives by the end of the game, you win. Generally, the objective will be in terms of destroying or recovering objective markers or occupying certain spaces. You lose if you do not accomplish the objectives by the end of the mission, or all of your raider units are eliminated from the map. You can also lose the mission and campaign if Lawrence is eliminated. The game ends when the last operation is conducted per the op cards. You can also play all 4 missions as a campaign game. For a campaign, you must play all 4 missions in order, starting with Mission 1. You must successfully complete all 4 missions to win the campaign. You may repeat one failed mission, but any subsequent failed mission loses the campaign. Now let's review the components. This game is packaged in a plastic bag and measures 9 by 6 inches. As with every game in the Raiders series, there is 1 copy of the system rules and 1 additional set of rules for the particular scenario being played. The scenario rules take precedence over the main system rules. There is 1 point-to-point unmounted paper mat measuring 11 by 17 inches. There is 1 sheet of 40 counters, 4 mission cards, and 14 operation cards referred to as op cards. Dice are required but not included. Up to 6 6-sided dice are recommended. However, in this game you should be fine with just 1 die. Also not included but recommended is 1 opaque container from which to draw hostile units. Now let's set up the game for our playthrough. We'll be playing 1 sample operation for the first mission. First, we spread out the map. Next, we select or randomly draw 1 mission card and place it next to the map. The mission card provides multiple sections of information. The first section shows the situation, which is where we will place the Ottoman garrison markers face down after shuffling them and drawing them randomly. We place the garrison markers face down in the corresponding spaces on the map. Next, we review the objective. In order to win this mission, we must occupy these 2 ports and any one other Arabian port signified per the terrain key with an anchor. Suez is not considered an Arabian port and is reserved only for Lawrence and British gear. Lawrence must also be in Cairo at the end of the mission. The execution section shows how many operations or op cards we receive for this mission. In this mission, we shuffle the op cards and deal 10 cards to form our op deck. The remaining op cards are placed face down as the reserve deck. If we gain additional operations during the game, we draw them from this deck. The logistics section indicates we receive 7 British pounds for our resources. We place the resource points marker on the 7 on the pounds track. The leadership section instructs us to place the leadership counter on the 1 box on the leadership track, and the Lawrence counter at Yenbo. The success section only applies to campaign games. If we were successful in this mission, we would follow the instructions to be applied to the next mission. Next, we place the Ottoman hostile units. We can place the hostile units face down in the Ottoman Expeditionary Forces box on the map to be drawn randomly when a combat situation occurs, or we can place the hostile units in our opaque container to be drawn when needed. We also place the 6-sided dice nearby. Next, we roll 1 die and consult the random placement table for Faisal's camp. We roll a 4, which places Faisal's camp in Wadi Rum. Our last step in setting up the game is to recruit our Arab units and gear for our starting force. We consult the recruiting chart on the map to see the cost in British pounds for each unit type and where the units can be placed on the map after they are recruited. In this mission, we have 7 pounds to start. Any pounds we do not use initially can be saved for recruiting in later turns. Let's review the Arab Revolt unit types. First, we have leaders. To recruit leaders, Lawrence must be part of the operating force. During a recruiting phase, if we want to recruit a leader, we must make a leadership check by rolling a die and obtaining a result equal to or less than the current leadership number. We can spend pounds to temporarily increase the leadership value up to 5. If successful, we place the leader with Lawrence. We can only make 1 leader recruit attempt per mission, plus once per battle won per Rule 20.2. The first number on all of the military units is the combat value, and the second number is the movement allowance per turn. The plus sign denotes an elite unit and confers a +1 to the tactical edge die roll in combat. Next is Arab mercenaries, which are Lawrence's elite bodyguard. This unit costs 4 pounds per the recruiting chart. This unit can travel through the deep desert spaces. Only this unit, leaders, and gear can enter those spaces. Then there are the Arab regulars, which cost 2 pounds each. There are 6 Arab Bedouin units which represent mobile formations using camels and horses. There are 2 British armored car detachments, and finally the available gear including demolitions for railroads, an airplane which can provide transportation for Lawrence and scouting, and machine gun support. The airplane adds +1 to the combat factor of the unit transporting it, and gives a +1 modifier to tactical edge. The machine guns add +1 to the combat strength of the unit transporting it. All of the friendly units are placed in the Arab Revolt recruits box. The Bedouin units are placed face down and are selected randomly if you choose to recruit them. We will create our starting force by spending 6 pounds and randomly drawing 3 Bedouin units which cost 2 pounds each. We then refer to the gear table and spend our last pound on a machine gun, which we assign to Unit D since it has the lowest combat value. A leader can carry 1 gear and other Arab units can carry up to 2 gear. Gear can only be purchased at the beginning of the mission, or in Suez, an Arabian port, or Faisal's camp. We assign these units and gear to Lawrence and place them in Lawrence's army box per the recruiting chart instructions. We also move the resource points marker to 0 since we have spent all 7 pounds. The resources cannot exceed 19 or go below 0. Now let's see how the game is played. There are 2 concepts we need to review in order to start playing. The first is stacking. Stacking is having more than 1 unit in a single space. In this game, stacking is limited to 2 units without a leader, and 4 units with an Arab leader. Lawrence can stack 4 units plus 1 per leadership level, so in this mission he starts with a stacking limit of 5. Leaders, gear, hostiles, and objective markers do not count against the stacking limit. Stacking is checked only at the end of a movement segment, so you may move any number of units through a space. An unlimited number of units may be stacked in a staging area, which in this game are Cairo and Suez. The next concept is a force. A force is a group of units in the same space which conducts operations together. A force can consist of a single unit or more than one unit up to the stacking limit. In this mission, Lawrence can start with a force of 3 Bedouin units or fewer, with whom he will conduct the initial operation. Each turn is considered an operation which consists of 5 segments: recruiting, scouting, recon, movement, drawing an op card, combat, and the objective segment. Let's start the first operation with the recruiting, scouting, recon segment. In order to conduct scouting or recon, we would need an airplane and be adjacent to a space with a face-down objective marker. Since we do not have a qualified unit available, and we do not have any pounds to recruit new units, we can advance to the movement segment. We now start the movement segment. Currently, Lawrence has 3 Bedouin units in his force with 1 carrying a machine gun. In order to maintain control of the Yenbo port, Lawrence will leave Unit B behind and only move with units C and D. The force can only move based on the slowest unit. Since the slowest units have movement values of 3, the force can move up to 3 spaces this turn. The force may also choose to move 2, 1, or 0 spaces. Lawrence's force moves 2 spaces until it reaches the next port, which has an Ottoman garrison. A moving force must cease movement in a space containing a face-up or face-down garrison marker. Next, we start the op card segment. We draw 1 op card from the op deck. We must draw a card during this segment even if we choose not to move. This card allows us 3 recruitment choices. We elect to add an armored car to our current force. We also get to make a leadership check to see if we can gain 1 op card from the reserve deck, which essentially gives us another turn for this mission. We make a leadership check by rolling 1 die. In order to pass, we must roll the leadership value or less. Since we rolled a 3 and the current leadership value was 1, we fail the check, resulting in no effect. We then discard the op card. Next is the combat segment. Since there are no hostile units present, we can move to the objective segment. The last segment in the operation is the objective segment. Since there is an objective marker in our space, we flip it over to reveal an Ottoman garrison with a strength of 2. This indicates how many Ottoman units we randomly draw from the hostile bin. If the Arabs win the battle, this is also the number of pounds won. If the Arabs lose, there is no loss of pounds. We draw 2 hostile units and place them in the order of the strongest combat rating to the weakest. We then place our units in any order we choose. We then have to determine which side has the tactical edge to see which side fires first. In order to do this, we roll 1 die for each side, with the higher roll winning the tactical edge. For each elite unit designated by a plus sign, we add 1 to the die roll. In this case, both sides end up with a tie of 3. In case of ties, we consult the terrain effects chart to see who wins a tie. Since we are in a port, the Arabs win the tie. Since we have the tactical edge, we go first by selecting our first unit in line and firing at any hostile unit. We fire by rolling 1 die and consulting the combat results table. If the die roll is equal to or less than the firing unit's combat value, the enemy unit is eliminated. Since the die roll is less than our combat value of 4, the targeted enemy is eliminated and returned face down to the Ottoman forces box. Combat is not considered simultaneous, so if a unit is eliminated, it is removed immediately and cannot return fire. Units then alternate fire. The next hostile unit must fire at the first Arab unit in line. The Ottomans roll a 5, which is greater than their combat value of 2, so they miss. We then fire our next unit, which has a combat value of 2, with the machine gun giving 1 extra combat value totaling 3. If there was more than 1 enemy unit, we could select which one would be the target. We also roll a 5, which is greater than our combat value of 3, so we also miss. Since there are no more opposing units to alternate fire, we then fire our remaining unit. We roll a 2, which is greater than Lawrence's combat value of 1, so we miss again. Since both sides have units remaining, we start round 2. Usually, if each side in consecutive rounds fails to inflict any losses on the other side, the combat is a draw and comes to an end. This is known as a break-off. However, the break-off rule does not apply to a space with an Ottoman garrison. In this case, combat must continue until one side is eliminated. When we start the second round of combat, the tactical edge is maintained, so we do not have to determine it again. We start again with our first unit in line and fire against the remaining hostile unit. We roll a 1, which is less than our combat value of 4, which eliminates the enemy target. The enemy unit is returned face down to the Ottoman forces box. We then place the garrison marker face down in the Ottoman garrison box and move our resource point marker to the 2 box since we gained 2 pounds due to our victory. This ends the sample turn for Lawrence of Arabia. Let's review the winning and losing conditions of the game. To recap, the first objective was to occupy the ports of Aqaba and Hejaz, plus 1 additional Arabian port. After our first sample turn, we were able to occupy Hejaz and Yembo. This leaves only Aqaba left to be occupied to fulfill the port objective. An operating force can move from an Arabian port to another port unless the destination port is occupied by the Ottomans. Since the Ottomans have a garrison at Aqaba, Lawrence and the Arabs will now have to move overland in order to reach and capture the port. If the Arabs are successful in capturing Aqaba, they must then make sure that Lawrence is in Cairo before the operations deck is exhausted. On the second turn in this example, Lawrence also has the option of using one operation to break off from his force at the current port location and make a port move to Suez. However, we would lose our only leader in play, including his tactical edge bonus and stacking ability, so this option may get Lawrence back to Cairo quickly, but would likely make the capture of Aqaba more difficult. Remember that the game ends in defeat if Lawrence is eliminated, all of your units are eliminated, or you run out of operation cards before the objectives are completed. This concludes this review of Lawrence of Arabia. Visit us at these sites and don't forget to leave a comment to share your experience with the game, or to let us know what games you'd like to see reviewed. Also be sure to subscribe to be notified of future videos. And if you'd like to experience something more exciting than trekking across the desert on a cantankerous camel, stick around for our disclaimer. Coming up next.